I'm in my forest today, and I have been learning about forestry management lately. So how to care for my forest. And I am located in Parry Sound, which is in northern Ontario, Canada. So this is a nice forest, I think. There's a good variety of trees, but lately this forest has not been cared for, so it's just been neglected. Nature's just kind of done its thing. And what happens over time if you just let a forest go, it can get really thick. And I've been learning that a really thick forest isn't necessarily a healthy forest, because trees need nutrients, and when you get trees that are really close together, they're going to be competing, and they're probably not both going to do well. So I thought I'd bring you along as I mark out trees that I want to be cutting down. So in my case, I'm fortunate because I have two different uses for the trees that I cut down. Potentially I can cut them out for firewood, and I can, if the tree is healthy, I can probably use it, because if it's a softwood tree, so an evergreen such as hemlock and pine, which I mostly have in this forest here, I can cut those up and sell them as camp wood. And then for the hardwoods, I can burn them myself in my wood stove, or also I'm going to be selling firewood as well. And then the bigger trees I would like to cut up for saw logs. I own my own sawmill, so I can cut large trees that are up to about 31 inches in diameter. Those are pretty big boys. And in terms of trees that are dead, those can just stay on the ground. They're great for some animals and nutrients for the soil. So today I'm going to be marking trees. Thought I'd bring you along. Maybe we can learn some things together. And I'm by no means like a forestry expert or anything. I haven't gone to school for logging or forestry management or anything like that. I've been watching a lot of YouTube, and honestly, just when I started to look into this, I found it kind of difficult to find good information just for like a homeowner on how do you care for your forest, how do you know what trees to cut down, what should you be doing, what trees should you cut, and all that. It can be kind of intimidating, so I thought I'd bring you along. Even though I'm not an expert, I think I've learned some things, and sorry about the lighting there. I think at this point I've got some basic understanding that'll hopefully help you. If you're like me, you've got a forest, maybe you don't even have a use for the wood, but you're just concerned about how do I care for the forest so that my trees can be healthy. Yeah, you can leave it alone, but surprisingly maybe to you, leaving it alone maybe isn't even the best course of action you can take in your forest. Yeah, one of the big things I learned is that forests need light. And if the canopy is super thick, as it is here, you're not going to be getting a lot of light down through the forest to help new growth. And you might end up just with a certain species of trees crowding out the other trees. And a diverse forest is a healthy forest. In this case, here in Ontario and other parts of the world too, I'm sure there's been an ash borer. So it's an insect that comes along and kills pretty much all the ash trees. So as you can imagine, if you had a forest that was only ash trees and the ash borer came along, bam, you got no more forest, or hardly any. There's a few ash trees that seem to be fairly resistant to the ash borer, but most of them are not. So yeah, one of the big things I've learned, a diverse forest is a healthy forest. So I'm gonna mark trees that are gonna be cut. As I'm filming this, it's early September, so I need to get on this because soon the leaves will be changing color and falling off. And it is definitely easier, I think, to see if your trees are healthy while they still got leaves on them. Because then you can see the branches that have no leaves on them are probably a sign of a tree that's maybe not doing so well. Especially if the branches are up higher. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna walk along, bring you guys along, and I'm gonna mark some trees, just point some things out about what I'm looking for in terms of how to decide what trees I want to be cutting down. So if you only get one bit of advice from this video, I think it'll be this. Instead of focusing on trees that you want to cut down, search for the trees that you want to keep and give them space, give them the best opportunity to thrive. So just open up the space around them, and that should go a long way to helping you manage your forest in a responsible way. So So my forest, in terms of the softwoods, it's got a lot of hemlocks and some pine. So softwood trees are evergreen trees. So here I've got two hemlocks really close together, and really, as I look up the canopy, I don't know how well it's going to show up on video, but they're definitely competing with one another. I'm looking down here, you can see all these dead branches. So there's an easy case here of one of these two trees can be cut down. They're probably like 4 feet apart, really close. And just as a general guideline for how many trees to cut down, I don't know that there's like a perfect like equation for it, but I've heard around like for every 3 trees you see, you can probably cut down 1, which maybe that sounds shocking to you, but as you look around in your forest, maybe depends how your forest is, but that might actually seem pretty reasonable. So, and I'm not gonna like do that like, oh, every 3 trees I gotta cut them down, so like I need to like thin out a third of my trees, but probably you can probably cut more trees out of your forest than you're guessing. So these trees here are both probably too small for me to mill, but they'll give me some nice firewood. So if you have a lot of trees, you can't overthink every single decision. In this case, these 2 trees are pretty similar. I opted to go for this one here because it's a little thinner. It's not big enough. Neither of these are big enough to be a saw log for me. This one here seems to be straighter. I'm gonna pull this one out. It's a bit more crooked, and it's just gonna go for camp wood. I think it's maybe also a bit shorter as well. We're gonna pretend that we don't see this tree here that I have hung up in that tree. So another thing for me when I'm picking what trees to cut down, I just want to keep in mind of trees that I can cut down safely and easily. So if there's a humongous tree that's leaning towards another stand of trees and it's just gonna get hung up in there, I'll probably just gonna leave that tree because it's just gonna end up falling into those other trees, and then we're going to have that issue there. But we weren't gonna talk about that. So moving on. So here we got 3 trees beside each other. While we just look at these trees, I guess I'll tell you what kind of trees I've got in this bush. So I've got, as I said, I've got a lot of hemlock and some pine, and I've got sugar maple, I've got some red maple, yellow and white birch, white oak, no sorry, red oak, not white oak. I don't think of any white oak, unfortunately, and beech as well. So here we've got a hemlock, and a beech. A lot of my beech trees seem to not be doing so well. I think there was a beech disease as well. I can't think of what it was called right now. Some kind of disease. So here I've got 4 trees that are all too close together. So in this case here, I would probably knock out this little guy. He's not going to be good for much. A little bit of firewood. So another guideline I've heard is that if you kind of look up at a tree and divide it into 4 quadrants, like so 4 sections, you should shoot for 2 to 3 of the quadrants being open, so not touching any other trees' canopies. And I've heard some people saying that trees should be like, the canopy should all be not touching each other. Now that is probably pretty extreme. I think you're gonna have a pretty sparse looking forest. And I think the main reason for that is for forest fire prevention, I guess, just so that the forest fire doesn't spread as fast if there were to be a forest fire. In the area that I'm in here, I'm honestly not too concerned about forest fires. Of course it could happen, but this isn't a state park or anything like that. So I'm standing in an open spot right now, but if you look at some of these trees, like these trees here, they're very open on the side facing the camera here. So those are okay. But just looking in here, I've got a cluster of like 4 or 5 hemlocks all together. And none of them are very big. Now the hemlocks aren't like my primary concern in the forest, but they do make good saw logs. So Ideally what I'm looking for with my hemlock trees is large trees. And the small trees I can cut down, and I love them for camp wood. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pick a few of these to get rid of. So when I first got this property and started thinking about cutting trees down in the forest and making trails, because there weren't really many trails in the bush, kind of had this poverty mindset, I guess, in terms of the trees. And I just thought with the trails, like, oh, I'm gonna try to make a trail where there's already kind of a trail, so I don't have to cut any trees down unnecessarily. Now I'm like, you know what, I need to be able to get through here with my four-wheeler, so let's make the trail nice and wide, because you know what, when you're trying to skid out logs, you're gonna need room for your four-wheeler. And if you end up like breaking equipment, catching on a tree because you just thought you couldn't cut it down, you're probably gonna end up being more wasteful than if you just cut down the tree in the first place. Unless it was just like a beautiful tree that you shouldn't be cutting down. Like, just make your trail nice and wide. It's going to save you a lot of time, and as a result of that, hopefully you'll be putting less pollution in the air, just with the equipment, and you know, just maybe wrecking things or just being inefficient with your time because you were too stingy. So make your trails nice and wide, not stupid wide, but wide enough so that you can zip through and not have to worry about catching a wheel on a tree. And like, one, you might wreck the tree because you're going to rip off bark, and obviously you could end up wrecking your equipment. So that's just a basic tip. Get your trails nice and wide, and it'll also let more light through, which is nice, because I do find this forest is so dense. Gets pretty dark in here, like towards the evening. It's like, wow, it's really dark in here. I walk out of the bush into my yard, it's like, oh, man, it's a lot brighter out there. So I think that's a sign that my forest is too thick. So hopefully this birch tree isn't listening. I believe this is a yellow birch. So I'm not an expert. It's possible that at some point I'm gonna call a tree something and it's not that. Let me know in the comments if I do that. Sometimes I have a hard time discerning between white and yellow birch, but I think the yellow birch tends to like have huge sheets of paper that kind of come off, versus white birch being more of like these little strands. Also, yellow birches can grow above stumps, so you might see them like with the roots like growing up over top of things. If you see that, it's probably a yellow birch. That's kind of cool. But hopefully this birch isn't listening, because birches look cool, but in terms of like my uses, they're not really the best firewood, and I'm not sure about milling. I don't think they're real popular unless you get like a real premium huge one that you can use like for a veneer, but I'm not into that, like from plywood. So beside it, I've got this beech tree. Beech is a great firewood. I don't have a ton of beech, and I would like to see more healthy beech trees in my forest here. So I'm gonna get rid of these three. I can use them for firewood. They're just not optimal for me. So we'll knock those out. Yes, I believe this is a yellow tree, by the way. So yellow birch. Sometimes they look more golden. So here's what I'm calling a yellow birch. Here, I think is a white birch. See those little strands? I don't see any of like those big sheets. So in terms of firewood, I believe the yellow birch is better than the white birch, but I do like how the white birch looks better. But I want both. But in this case, this is the tree that I'm choosing to keep. This tree I don't think is going to get huge anyways. You got 3 trees coming down like in one trunk. So we're going to knock those out. That's going to give this beech more room. So we have more tree. And also help out this white birch as well. And then things like this, like those saplings, you can get rid of that. That guy's gonna be struggling. We're just gonna get rid of him because he's gonna be stealing a bit of nutrients that I want this beech to be getting. So as you go through your forest, you might notice that, especially if your forest is of decent size, that different parts of the forest, the species will change. So for me, up at the front of my forest, I have some sugar maple. And then as you go back further, or in some spots at least, there's not too many sugar maples. And that's basically because there could be a few different reasons for that, but one of them being that different trees like different environments. So something like a red maple does okay in shady locations. So if there's huge trees blocking the canopy, you're less likely to get a tree like a sugar maple, which really likes nutrient rich soil and sun. But the red maple, it can grow when there's more competition. And same for the hemlock trees as well. They do well in shade. I believe cedar trees do well or better towards the edge of the field. Yeah, different trees have different environments that they like. So if you're noticing that certain parts of your bush have different kinds of trees, maybe take a look at the kind of environment it has, and that might give you a bit of a clue about what that tree likes. And if you want those kind of trees to expand into your bush, pay attention to that, and maybe you can create that environment in more parts of your bush to expand that. Now obviously if it's something to do with the soil, maybe not, but if it's in terms of sun or shade, that could be a pretty easy thing to work at. So another thing to discuss is standing deadwood. Initially when I thought about cutting trees up for firewood, I thought of, oh, I'm just gonna cut up all the trees that are dead on the ground already. And just find those and get those logs and cut them up. Bad idea. If they just fell, perfect, it's great. But what I soon discovered is those trees are rotten. And I cut a bunch of them up initially, rookie, and the wood's soft. It's not great. Maybe you think that like a good forest is like clean and pristine and like you don't have dead trees laying around. Wrong. A messy forest is actually part of a healthy forest. It creates habitat for animals. And maybe you think, oh, sounds like a bunch of hocus pocus. Or maybe you just don't really care, and that's maybe a little bit how I felt. And then the other day, I was in the bush around here actually, very close to where I am right now. And I'm gonna pop the video up on the screen here, of this barred owl just hanging out, and I'd never seen that before. And that kind of made me think like, wow, like some of these trees that I cut down like might be an animal's favorite tree. And obviously I know it's part of nature, things die, things change, but something to think about. And obviously we can't avoid just like cutting all trees down. We need trees, we need wood, and even if we don't cut the trees down, eventually they're going to die. The animals in them are going to have to find a new home. And in this case here, it's not like they're going to be entirely homeless with no hope of finding a new home if I cut down their tree, because there's trees all around. But I think just seeing that owl gave me a bit of perspective, like, oh yeah, you know, this tree that I'm cutting down, like maybe an animal loves it. It's part of its story, I guess. That's kind of woo. Anyway, so yeah, back to the firewood thing. So beyond, I'm just looking for trees that were down. That my next thought was, oh, I'll just cut down the standing dead trees. So here we got a beech that is dead. That can be okay. Sometimes for firewood, that's great because they can be already dry. I think you just need to be careful with them. Often they might end up being rotten already. So if you get to them too late, they're not going to be no good for firewood, and they can be dangerous to cut down. So I'm not a arborist or a chainsaw expert, but it's just something to be aware of. Don't feel like you have to, I guess what I'm saying with this whole story started with, don't feel like you have to cut down every single dead tree you see. Sometimes it's a waste of time, like if it's already rotten, and you might be putting yourself at risk. So dead trees are okay. You know, some animals like them. I don't know if you can see that hole up there. There might be an animal living up there. There might be like woodpecker holes in it. Birds might like it. So some dead trees in your forest are okay. Don't like waste all your time just trying to clear out the dead trees. That's my advice. There's probably better ways you can spend your energy and your time on. If your primary goal is the health of your forest, instead of just trying to get rid of all the dead trees and clean everything up, instead just look for the trees that you want to keep and give them space. So here we got a hemlock tree like right tight beside a birch tree. That's obviously not good, so we can knock this guy down. Yeah, and we'll maybe cut a few sections few pieces of firewood out of that, and the rest we'll just leave laying on the ground. And in terms of like branches and stuff on the ground, as I was just talking about, like the mess, that's actually good. This will decompose. And that can be tough because I know it can be real messy and nasty. Like if you want to be like walking through your bush a lot, you might not like seeing that. You can chip it up, you can pull it out and burn it. But definitely it's okay, and actually I think some people think it's great to do that. Just leave that laying in the bush. Some animals will like that. Here I've got a kind of maybe an unsightly mess, and I actually have a trail going through here, so I probably will clean this up a little bit. But some animals like that, and that's okay. And I know one of the foresters that I really like, he says like some foresters used to really try to get everything flat and close to the ground, and he said that it's good to leave some stuff sticking up as well. Like here we've got something that's down, and you can see branches sticking up. That's okay too. Some animals might like that. Maybe it'll even be like a hiding spot for animals. It's okay. So it's kind of cool. Even though it can seem intimidating, it's not like if you like go out there for a day and like cut something that someone else wouldn't, that you made a big mistake. Trees grow back. And I also learned an interesting thing, just that some trees, like when you scarify the ground, so in my case, like when I'm dragging a tree out with my log arch, as it drags across the ground, it's going to be scratching up the dirt a bit, and that can promote some new growth, which is really cool. So again, yeah, don't believe that to protect your forest you just have to leave it alone. It's okay to get in there and cut some trees out. So I'll just show you some quick. So here we got some maple trees. So I've got red maple and sugar maple, and there's an easy way to tell them apart if you can see the leaves. So this is a sugar maple, and I know that because a sugar maple has like straight lines on the edge of the leaves, whereas a red maple will be serrated, so like a steak knife. So I know that these are sugar maples, which I like. The sugar maples, to me, well, they're just a much better wood. Sugar maple is considered a hardwood, a hard maple. Red maple is a soft maple. Still technically a hardwood, but a lot softer. So for me, I want to see the sugar maple. I don't get as excited about the red maple just because they don't have as much value. But the red maples, I guess, are more hardy. They grow better in shade. So anyway, here we got this sugar maple. I can see up there it's got this chunk out of it, so that might be one I just take down. It's got some funky stuff going on, and actually as I look up further I see some dead branches, so that one's probably not doing so well. So I'm gonna maybe give this guy here a bit more space, so we'll take this guy down, and probably this smaller one right beside it, he's not gonna do too well. So we've got two what are they? I believe those are beech trees growing, or saplings I guess, growing pretty close to this beech here, which I'm going to be cutting down. It's dead. And then we've got this one here, which is a maple, I believe. But like I said before, I like the beech trees. I'd like some more. So you can definitely cut down some of your saplings, because these are going to be, they're too close together. They're not going to both grow really big and healthy likely where they are. So I'm going to probably cut this one down because it's really leaning. But I will leave that one here. It can get bigger because in time maybe I'll come and cut down some more of these trees, and that'll give this one time to grow. But definitely something easy you can do for the future. Just cut down some of the little saplings. Depending where you are in your bush, you might have a lot of them. Cut some of those out so they're not competing with each other, and then maybe they'll grow faster. Rather than having like 30 trees really close to each other slowly growing, like cut a whole bunch of them out and just think of the future, what it's going to look like. Like think about it, do you ever see like 10 trees this size just like wham bam 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 bam, like a forest that's just like solid wood? No, you don't. So if you see what looks like impossible for the future in the ground, you can clear some of those out. Yeah, I think you just be doing the forest a favor. It doesn't need to be super thick. Like where I'm walking through right now, there's all kinds of little saplings. And these little guys here, like this doesn't even have, there's a hemlock and it doesn't even have greenery on these low branches. So it's only got like from here up, so I think already it's not doing well. And another tip I heard in terms of like figuring out what trees like, which I don't really know how to give you an example of it per se, but if you're wondering if a tree is shade tolerant, look at the branches. And if this species of tree that you're looking at has a lot of branches close to the ground, it probably is more shade tolerant. Well, I guess the hemlock is an example right here. It's got branches like 4 feet off the ground. Now they're not doing well, it's not getting much light. But versus like the sugar maple, I don't think typically has the branches so low. Like here we've got a maple and it's got a nice trunk before it gets any branches. So just a little clue or a hint, I guess. So yeah, here is an example of what could be a dangerous tree. This is cool. It's really rotten, you could say. That's really funky. Now if this were a big tall tree, I would probably just leave it. Now in this case, oh, it actually does. See, it's got a branch that's falling off. Well, in my case here, now if I was scared that the branch was gonna fall on me, like if it were going over my path, which now that I look at it, it might be. Anyway, that's something to think about with these dead trees. How dangerous is this going to be to cut? Yeah, that's a funky one. I think this is a cherry tree, a black cherry. So I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera here, but this is a section, an example of a section that's just a mess. In terms of the trees just being way too close. Yeah, again, like I was talking about earlier, like imagine, like, can you imagine all these trees growing out to be 2 feet thick or 2 feet in diameter, like this packed close together? Nuh-uh, not gonna happen. So like a whole bunch of these, I can just cut these little guys out because they're not gonna do good. They're just way too close. Yeah, they're not gonna have much of a chance. So we gotta just open this up. They're just wasting nutrients really at this point. So here's another different example of something. So I love ash trees and I wish I had more. I wish the ash borer weren't a thing, but here I got one. I think this is an ash. And look how crooked that is. Now maybe you'll love looking at, like, they look cool. They look pretty gnarly, but I don't think this one has much of a chance of growing to be big. So I'm gonna cut this one out while I can still use the wood before it gets eaten by bugs. So it's great firewood. This tree's a weird one. Yeah, it's got a crazy lean. So if you find trees like that, you can cut those down. They could potentially be dangerous in the future. It could uproot. That's obviously going to be a tremendous amount of weight as it gets taller. There can be a lot of force on the root ball as this tree grows and tries to find some sunlight. So we'll take this guy down so he's not in the way of other trees. And hopefully there's some ash saplings in the area here that are going to start to grow once we get this daddy longlegs out of the way. So up here in Parry Sound, we have a lot of bedrock. The trees are pretty amazing, like just what they can grow around. So here we had a tree that was like grew up right beside the bedrock basically, but she's fallen over now. But yeah, isn't that cool? So I just talked about trees uprooting. So there's a situation where a tree uprooted. And now for me, I think I found this tree in time that I can cut this one up. So yeah, you could leave it, you could cut it up. I'll probably cut that one up. That'd be good firewood. But again, if you see stuff like this, you can leave it if you want. I guess another thing I would say, especially if you've got a really large bush and you're new to this, or you just started thinking about it more and you're feeling overwhelmed about how to decide what trees to cut down, is just don't overthink it, and maybe just start slow. Like just look for the real obvious ones. Look for trees that you can tell are sick or dying or aren't doing so great. Maybe they got like huge like pieces of bark missing and stuff like that. Or you look up and there's tons of dead branches. Dead branches down low don't necessarily mean that the tree's not doing well. It might just mean it's not getting light. But if you see like dead branches way up high, or other defects, like cut those down and just search through your property for trees that seem like easy wins just to get rid of, or two trees that are like super close together. Just cut down some of those. Don't feel like you have to like work in like a 50 by 50 foot section and like get everything perfect in that before you move on to the next one. You can just slowly move through your, or quickly move through your property, like driving around on your ATV or whatever, like, oh, there's a tree I can cut down because there's two really close together. Drive further, like, oh, there's another one, easy. So don't let yourself get overwhelmed. And if you do feel totally overwhelmed, I think there's resources available. Like maybe you can get like a local forester or something out and to help you come up with some kind of plan on how to manage your forest. Yeah, I can't really speak into that too much because I've never done it. Maybe it'll even be free, I don't know. Maybe you can speak to someone on the phone, get a friend out or something, but hopefully this video is being helpful to you guys. Yeah, some of us just get out in the forest, spend time, look around, pay attention to what you're seeing, and just think about the future. Like, which one of these trees do you think is most likely to do well? What do you want to see in the future? Yeah, what are your goals? And again, like one of the huge things for forests is just light. Getting light down. Even like if you look around here, like look how much of this forest floor is just leaves. Like there's not much growth on the floor here. And back further in the bush, I've got a lot of ferns. It's wet back there, and I think there's more light coming through. But yeah, just think about that. Light is your friend and space is your friend in the forest. Trees need nutrients, and when they're just wham bam close together, they're not going to be getting the nutrients that they need. The smaller trees probably aren't going to be getting the light that they need. So get some light coming through the forest. That's going to do wonders for you. So I think that's going to be a wrap for this video. It's supper time for me. Gotta get out of the woods, back home. Neat. Hopefully this video was helpful for you. Sorry if it was kind of scattered. I didn't really have an outline or anything. I just thought I'd bring you out here so I can talk to you guys and hopefully provide a little bit of value to you. And yeah, if I said anything you don't agree with or something you want to add, I'd love if the comments section could be a place where you just share your tips, your insights, just things that you've learned from logging your forest or other forests, whether it's your job or just a hobby, a side hustle, whether you're a firewood guy, a sawmill guy, or you just own some land and you just want it nice. Maybe you have some trails through it just for walking or biking, hiking, something like that, and you just want it to look nice, and or you just want to know that you're caring for your woods. Yeah, hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you enjoyed it. You know the usual YouTube things. I'd love if you'd hit the thumbs up. You can subscribe if you want. My channel at this point is kind of all over the place. Maybe I'll do another video like this in the future, who knows. So yeah, again, I guess just to recap, if you're overwhelmed with what to do with your forest, first thing you can do is just look at the trees that you want to keep, trees that you want to see last, do well, stay healthy. Open up the space around them. If trees are really close together, you can probably cut some of them down. Make space, let light come in. Light's your friend. So thanks so much for watching, coming along with me. Love to hear your feedback down below. I know this wasn't the most professional video. I just kind of wandered around, thought of things as I looked at things. Let me know if you enjoyed it, and maybe I'll do it again. Thanks for coming along. Take care.